The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect or represent the views and opinions of WBGR Network. Any questions or concerns about what is said should be directed to the show host, whose information will be provided upon request.
My brothers keep a show, I gotta let them know. Tuesday, 7 p.m., gotta let them know. 3 M's, mint and model, gotta multiply. God gets all the glory, hands in the sky. My brothers keep a show, I gotta let them know. Tuesday, 7 p.m., gotta let them know. 3 M's, mint and model, gotta multiply. God gets all the glory, hands in the sky. My brothers keep a show. Introduce the host. My brothers keep a show. Introduce the host. That's the Dr. Michael Green.
We have always been loyal when the ideals of American democracy have been attacked. We have given our blood in its defense, from Crispus Attucks on Boston Commons to the battlefields of France. We have fought for the democratic principles of equality under the law, equality of opportunity, equality at the ballot box, for the guarantees of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Working at the Navy Yard made me feel patriotic.
Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the greatest show on this side of greatness, and it is My Brother's Keeper. Welcome. And of course, we do know that it's what? Terrific Tuesday, and it is great. Hey, thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight. Sitting alongside me tonight is my faithful co-host extraordinaire, Dr. Bryan Champion, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
You missed it, right? You just jumped right on in.
I had to say hello. I haven't been here.
That's a good thing. That's not a good thing. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. But let's get some housekeeping rules in order right now. Dallas, Fort Worth, thank you so much. San Antonio, Texas, as well as Raleigh, Durham, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, South Carolina, New Jersey, Maryland, and we're going to travel all the way over to the West Coast with Bishop Jelani Kafela with the Imani Christian Cathedral Church. Thank you so much for your support. Also, Bishop James B. Walker, the presiding prelate of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, 7th District. Thank you so much for your support equally as well. Now, the call-in number tonight is 301-429-9247, 301-429-WBGR. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please remember to like and share. Also, if you have Roku, you can tune in to our wonderful show, The Greatest Show on This Side of Greatness on Roku, or downloading the WBGR app on Fire Stick, as well as Apple TV. And we are on all of those vehicles, which just select one and definitely will come on in your home as opposed to your mobile device. But nonetheless, thank you so much for tuning in to the show. Also like to thank everyone for your well wishes of the birthday shout outs. And whether you sent a card or you cash apped, whether you were on vacation or not, I'd like to thank you so much for just thinking about me. My mom told me one time when I was younger that no one has to do anything for you. So when they do, just say thank you. So just thank you so much for thinking about me. And also, this Friday, it is going down. We're having our youth prayer service. Most of our young people have gone on back to school, but we're having a youth prayer service, 923 Cedar Heights Drive, and that's Cedar Heights, Maryland, Capitol Heights, Cedar Heights, Maryland, 20743. St. Matthew is the church, 7 p.m. It is going down. We are sending our young people back into school empowered and just invigorated with the Spirit of God. So definitely 7 p.m. this Friday, St. Matthew, 923 Cedar Heights Drive, and that's Cedar Heights, Capitol Heights, Maryland. And so come on out. And even if you're not a young person, please feel free to come on out and watch God put some super on your natural. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Champion.
Yes, sir. I can talk now.
I told you when on air, all right? We have guests.
All right, how you doing?
Hey,
Happy
man.
belated birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. My Cash App not going off.
No.
But that's okay.
I don't know how to use that.
Well, I just take, since you're right here.
But, hey, I'm sure that everybody showed you some love and blessings in the congregation over at St. Matthew.
Yes.
I know how they love their pastor, so I know that they was awful good to you. So
Yes, they were.
Yes,
definitely. I'm God thankful.
But it's good to be back.
Amen.
Always good to be here. Somebody clowned on me the other day. He said, "Man, you keep pushing out there. My brothers keep it 5 days a week. Said, when you gonna be there 2 weeks in a row?" No, I'm saying,
I want to shake that person's hand.
But they're making a point. They're making a point. So I will tell you, I will be back next week.
Again. Okay.
Right.
Amen.
So, yeah.
Well, it's definitely always good to have you back in the house.
Well, it's
but
good to be here.
Presiding Elder Kevin Agee definitely stood in and did a wonderful job. We kicked it off with the Congressional Black Caucus. And so, and again, we're going to continue on into that conversation as well.
Sure.
Piggybacking on it
Yes.
through our Invisible Warriors. But definitely, you have something for the listening audience.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to say a little something, and we'll work in our Black History person of interest into this as well. The last 2 days, I've spent some time downtown at the White House Conference on Historically Black Colleges and Universities, and it was a very good conference. It's amazing what can happen when government, private industry, and our colleges get together in a way of partnership. And when you get so many great minds in the same room, that we really have some very strong strength and the ability to collaborate. So I was just blessed the last couple of days to be in that room with so many dynamic people, and to most of the HBCU college presidents were here, as well as some of their developmental officers and faculty. They had over 50 students who are White House scholars that were recognized and went through some leadership development training at the same while we were in our session. So it was a great time, and I like the way it kind of moves right over into Congressional Black Caucus, because as we start looking to lobby to continue to ensure that our schools are getting the proper assistance through Congress, that a lot of them get to hang over and get a chance to engage their congresspersons while here in town. So it's been a great conference. So the media is going to tell you the highlight. If you watch the media today, the highlight was that the president came and he addressed the conference. And while I was very happy that he took part of his time to come and join us, I was a little disappointed by some of his messaging, because he really began to take credit for so many things that a lot of people have worked very hard over the years. And because of his administration, 80% of African-American judges went to HBCUs. And because of his administration, 50% of individuals with terminal degrees went to HBCUs, and he's taking credit for all these things. While we recognize it as being a true fact, and thank God for the HBCUs, Mr. President, I'm not sure we want to give you total credit for that. And the thing I just want to say to you, Mr. President, if you're going to take credit for things, today was a great opportunity to take credit for the rise in the individuality of people who want to say that white supremacy is all right. See, we have had a very serious change in the way that people relate to one another. And it's because of your administration and some of the ways that you've enacted laws, some of the decisions you've made, comments that you've made, that all of a sudden there's this feeling that it's okay. And we just want to let you know that it's not okay. And if you're really about, taking credit for the advancements of African Americans and people of color, then you also need to address the fact that you are promoting something that is also detrimental to the survival of our nation and our way of looking at one another in an environment of inclusion and diversity. So we just want to say thank you for coming, but we also want to call you out when you are not really hitting the mark. But I just wanted to say that today, and I'm going to get off it. They told me not to say too much because we got some awesome guests here today. So I'm just going to say one more last thing about our African-American person of interest.
Can I just interject something right quick?
Sure.
Please. The views that are currently expressed by Dr. Bryan Champion are not necessarily the views of that of my brother's keeper. Go ahead. Or WBGR. Well, they already put their disclaimer out.
Yeah, they did.
Thank you, Miss Producer.
They
She
did
gave
that
me
when
the
you
eye.
started.
When he first came
When he started the show, all of a sudden they said, we got to put this disclaimer up here. But I just wanted to also look at a person today and recognize Dr. William R. Harvey, who is the president and the 12th president of Hampton University.
Mm-hmm.
He also was the former chair of the President's Council on Historically Black Colleges and Universities. He's been the president of Hampton since 1978. He celebrated 40 years of presidency. And that's an awesome thing when the average tenure of a college president is about 5 years. And the fact that he has been in 41 years as a college president, it just shows something. But this is what I found really interesting when I was kind of looking up a little information about him, is that he was the first African American to own a soda bottling company. That he owns. He's the 100% owner of a Pepsi bottling company in Michigan, and so an entrepreneur. And that's what we need to understand, that we have to diversify as we look to be more progressive. But he's a graduate of a small HBCU, Talladega College, where he graduated, and that's also in Alabama. He graduated from Virginia State, and then he did his doctorate, and he graduated from Harvard University in 1972. After doing his undergraduate work, he spent 3 years in the military doing active duty, but also completed a military reserve career where he reached the rank of lieutenant colonel. So I just want to say thank you to Dr. Harvey. He's our person of interest. And if I could put in one last plug, he's a member of Omega Psi Phi.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that information, Dr.
Right.
Champion. And Hampton is your rivalry, Howard.
Well, it's not a rivalry. I mean, and I'm not going to sit
It's a
here
good-
and say
good
anything
rivalry.
about, because Howard and Hampton, they want to say, oh, the real HU. And so I'll just tell them, I say, yes, you are a real HU because you have reached university status. See, I'm old enough where Hampton used to be Hampton Institute.
And there he goes.
And now they are. So we are the original Howard University, the original HU. I love my HBCU. All right,
Let me
Howard
take
University.
the plug. Let me disconnect the plug. Okay,
No,
go ahead.
that's right. You
Go ahead.
started.
No, you good, brother. You
started.
good. You good.
But
man. I miss you, man.
But we give credit to Hampton and to all of the other historically black colleges. You know, it's like anything else when you compete with your brothers and sisters, that you have that little rivalry and everything. And being big brother, we always know we're number one. But at the same time, we still love the rest of our family in the HBCU community.
Okay. All right. Thank you and good night.
My grandfather graduated Hampton in 1916.
Okay.
1916?
Wow.
Got some history in the house today.
Yes, sir.
Okay, just want to give a shout out to Pastor Vanessa Hughes Kennedy, Minister Candace Dula, also Reverend Harrison, Pastor Valerie Everett, Presiding Elder Kevin Agee. Thank you for watching, and thank you for showing up and being in place for standing in for Dr. Champion a few weeks in a row, actually.
I
Thank
still
you so
feel
much.
blessed that by all that he put into the seat.
And also Carol Black Henderson, thank you for watching so much. Thank you guys. Thank you everyone for watching.
Let me say one last thing to all of you, all of you who are alumni of HBCU.
About that.
put I love my HBCU. Hashtag the name of
Yes.
their HBCU. We want to have that in the line. We want to see who's represented here today.
Yes. Before we start, I just want to give a quote. The true worth of a race must be measured by the character of its womanhood. And that is a quote by Mary McLeod Bethune. Very profound. I couldn't think of a better way to introduce this particular segment. So with that, I just wanted to welcome tonight Professor Gregory Cook. Welcome,
Thank
sir.
you.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And Dr. Wells, Reginald Wells, thank you guys so much for coming through and hanging out with us tonight.
Pleasure.
But before I get into discussing a lot of your work, I wanted to talk about one thing in particular. But let me just share with you about this brother Cook. He is African American. He has a documentary that celebrates African American women and their contributions during World War II, and it is called The Invisible Warriors. That's what you just saw. Very powerful, and to me, that is another hidden figure within the race of the African American people. But before we take an in-depth look at that, there's another one, the Chocolate Soldier.
Chocolate Soldiers from the USA.
And that talks about over 100 unforgotten black men who served in World War II.
Well, it's about the 140,000 African American men and women who went to Great Britain prior to D-Day.
Okay.
And what was unique about this situation is the fact that the white Britons accepted them and embraced them until the U.S. Army introduced Jim Crow to Great Britain.
Yeah. As it was unfolding, it was quite amazing to see how the black nurses would be able to tend to the white patients, but the white nurses couldn't attend to the black male patients, and they treated second-class citizens. I mean, they treated Germans better than they treated the African American soldiers and the prisoners. The German prisoners were treated better than the soldiers who went and fought and gave their lives. So you take off from there, brother.
Well, all I'll say about that is that the African American nurses, there was a unit stationed in Great Britain, and they were limited. They could treat black American soldiers and they could treat German POWs. And that was also true in the United States. We had many thousands of German POWs in the United States during the war. And again, the same situation was in play. Black nurses could treat black soldiers, and they treated German POWs, but were not allowed to treat white soldiers for the most part. There were some unusual circumstances where they did, but for the most part, things were segregated. And there were fewer than 800 nurses in the Army African American nurses in the Army during World War II. And interestingly, there was always an acute shortage of nurses throughout the war. And 50,000 nurses did serve, but there were never enough. But they restricted black women from being nurses. And so, like I said, there were between 700 and 800 who actually served.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It's amazing during the documentary when you brought that point that America introduced that too, because of Great Britain, and how the African Americans had already established relationships, and everything was flowing.
Well, It was better there than it was here, and a lot of the issues involved. One of the reasons why Jim Crow was established there were two reasons. I would say two primary reasons. One, wherever you had black and white soldiers come in contact, there was violence. There were three major race riots in Great Britain: Bamber Bridge, Leicester, and Bristol, where black and white soldiers fought each other with weapons in these towns. So the other issue involved British women dating and interacting with African American soldiers, and that was a major problem, particularly but not exclusively for Southern whites. Yeah.
Again, that documentary is also on Vimeo.
Well, part of it actually, quite frankly, a documentary's been sitting on the shelf for 9 years. It won 2 awards, but it's never been released, and I'm working on releasing it next year.
Did you just say it's still sitting on the shelf and it's won awards?
Yes. It's been sitting on the shelf for 9 years.
Wow.
And I'm working on releasing it finally, if things go well, next Veterans Day of 2020.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, from what I've had an opportunity to view, it was very powerful.
Yes.
Very, very powerful.
Thank
Now, Invisible Warriors. Yes. Invisible Warriors. When I first saw that, I saw Rosie the Riveter, the black woman.
Yes.
And then I saw Rosie the Riveter, the white woman.
Yes.
We can do it.
Yes.
But that's what the white Rosie the Riveter, but then the black Rosie the Riveter said, we did it.
Yes.
We did it.
Yes.
I mean, that was profound, man. I mean, it was just, I'm getting excited. But a lot of that goes unspoken.
Yes.
But what inspired that work? Invisible Warriors.
A lot of things. This is my mother. One of the things. Her name was Ethel Rebecca Becky Jones Cook, and in 1943 she rode on her suitcase from Norfolk, Virginia, to Washington D.C. to get her first job in the U.S. Patent Office. She was 18 years old. So she told me this story a couple of times when I was a kid, right? And for some reason it stuck. I didn't have, a lot of things go in one ear and out the other, but what I remember about her telling me the story was her mood picked up. She had a smile on her face, and it was clear that she felt a certain kind of pride in that, because my mom was a stay-at-home mom. But when my father met her, she was working. And so the story stayed with me. And as I came out of Chocolate Soldiers, I automatically kind of gravitated to the African-American Rosies that I stumbled upon in Great Britain.
Wow.
And so when I saw that there were 600,000 of these women, in my opinion, they're the most significant generation of African Americans, women in this country's history. Their contributions to the black community dwarf the 3 women in Hidden Figures. That's not to demean or diminish what those women did. But these women had tremendous impact at the time on the black community because of their community involvement, the money that they were pulling into the community, and for their families. And so what was interesting about these women is, unlike, let's say, the 6,000 women who were WACs, Women's Army Corps, or the 800 who were nurses, those women knew immediately that they were doing something historically significant because they were part of a cohesive unit, part of the military. Here we're talking about fundamentally 600,000 individual women. And most of these women that I've talked to, they just saw it as another job. They saw it as a great opportunity. And we have to remember, like, going into World War II, more than 80% of all black women who were employed were either domestics or sharecroppers. So all of a sudden the war comes and they have this opportunity to get these high-paying jobs. Right?
Wow.
And so that was, a lot of their significance, and that's what motivated me to do this.
Wow. It's a very powerful work, but at the part where they, I was watching, what's that, Bernice Bowman,
Bernice Bowman,
and Dorothy Height was, and I mean I was like, wow. I mean, it was really amazing to see these women, and you pointed out in the documentary from 85 to 105, 83 to 105 now, and some of them are still alive today.
Yes. Actually, I talked.
And they had some fire too, man.
Yes.
These ladies had some fire.
They had that edge, and actually, most of them, I'm still, in touch with them. They still have the edge. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to be with one tomorrow. Susan King.
Okay.
She's 95. From what I can tell, she's in perfect health.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
She was an actual riveter at an airplane factory, Eastern Aircraft in Baltimore.
Yeah.
So these were some extraordinary women. They were resilient. They were patriotic. They were tough, like TUFF tough.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And they were loving and caring, and they had a major impact on what happened to all African American women over the last 75, 80 years. All African American women who are in traditional, non-traditional roles, careers, they're standing on these women's shoulders.
Yes. I mean, ship makers and making planes, and they were putting in some real work.
Yes.
But as they left the domesticated work and some from the home, talk about how Jim Crow treated them.
Well, Jim Crow was still the law of the land pretty much everywhere in America. So during the war, the Pittsburgh Courier started this campaign called the WB campaign.
Right.
It was stimulated by a black soldier who wrote in January 1942. His question was, why should I go fight for America, fight for other people's freedoms, and I don't have them here? So as a result, the editor of the Pittsburgh Courier implemented this program called the WB campaign, which stood for Victory Overseas against against fascism overseas, and Victory against racism at home. And so it was a galvanizing campaign that helped, that pulled the black community together. So we were fighting on two fronts.
Yes.
We're fighting America's enemies overseas, and we're fighing our own enemies here.
Wow. And amazing. It just talked, really, it just spoke volumes of the resiliency of the black people, period.
Yes.
We can go on and on. I mean, I'm loving it, but I get Dr. Champion and also Dr. Wells into the conversation as well. We don't want to monopolize it, because then they'll talk about us, right?
We're getting so much great information here that I'm just sitting here and very pleased to have this opportunity to share with you. I was looking at something that you wrote, and it really resonated with me, and I think it's just so important, where you said that your goal is to move things from the margins to the center and front page around African American history. And as we know, and this has been a challenge that we've gone through, is that society has marginalized so much that we've done. And so this goal of putting it on the front pages is definitely something that I applaud, as well as the information that you're sharing with us today. And it wasn't until I guess I was reading something that you had sent us that I really began to understand the impact of how it changed the economy, it changed the mindset, it began to change the whole world. And again, the things we take for granted today are because these ladies began to make that transition of thought.
Yes, absolutely.
When you talk about the economics, the economic piece, it just puts me in the mind to say that that's what's necessary or even needed again today. And that's what builds community. That's what fosters community, and you start with the economic empowerment. When we send our young people off to be educated, we don't send them off to go get educated and then go stay away. We send them to be educated and come back and build, the village. So definitely that was profound when you're talking about the economic structure and bring that money back in. Dr. Wells, want to bring you into the conversation now.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is his debut. Say hey to the people.
Hello, people.
So you have anything else you want to add into this?
Well, I was thinking as Dr. Champion was talking, I was thinking of my association with Gregory. We grew up together in Philadelphia many moons ago, and I've had the pleasure, the honor, of watching him move on this particular initiative. And of course I knew his mom quite well. and like a second mom to me. And it really is gratifying to see this come to fruition. And I appreciate the fact that you are featuring it here. And your point about bringing it from the margins into the center is so desperately needed. We do some work for American University, and I had the opportunity over the last couple of years to offer a course in the School of Public Affairs on race policy and administration. And I had the opportunity to bring Dr. Cook, I'll call him, and with Mrs. King, one of the Black Rosies that he features in his documentary, and she blows the students away. These are classes of white, Asian, Hispanic, and African American students, many of whom don't know this history. And I'm fond of that African proverb: if we stand tall, it's because we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors. And unfortunately, far too many of us don't know who our ancestors were. And so this kind of work brings that to the fore and allows people to stand on those shoulders with confidence, knowing from whence they came. And that's a powerful thing. I've tried to encourage him over the years to do this work, very often much to his own detriment in terms of his ability to do other things. But it is such a labor of love and an important initiative that I've tried to be supportive of him. And
he's been very supportive. He's been.
But it's important work. I mean, it's having these women. And as a matter of fact, she's going to be with you tomorrow.
I believe so. Yeah.
Mrs. King, she's 95, 96?
95.
95. Yeah. And she's just as spry, and as you said, she has fire as she recalls these events in her life, and that's huge. That's huge.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, so you mentioned tomorrow, so let's tell folk out here about tomorrow and where they can actually meet you and see Rosie and what else you'll be doing this weekend during the Congressional Black Caucus.
Tomorrow, I think about 6:30 at the Civil War Museum in Washington. The first 30 minutes of Invisible Warriors will be screened. And I'm pretty sure Rosie Susan King will be there after the screening. They're going to screen the first half, and there'll be a Q&A, and Mrs. King will be there. And then on another issue, on Thursday, I'm going to meet a woman in Maryland who is 101. She was in the Women's Army Corps during World War II. And my organization, the Basil and Becky Educational Foundation, is having a luncheon in Philadelphia on March 7th. And we are bringing together, we're honoring the African American women of World War II. So we're talking Rosies, nurses, and WACs.
Wow.
And so I'm going to meet her tomorrow, Thursday for the first time. We've talked on the phone a couple of times, but I'm going to meet her. And then on Friday, the Congressional Black Caucus, in the evening, I think it starts about 6 o'clock. They are honoring Invisible Warriors, African American women in World War II, and me. So I'm very grateful and appreciative of that. But ultimately, kudos go to the women. I mean, I'm just the conduit, but they're the ones. I stand on my mother's shoulders, and they did the grunt work.
But right there, I'm right there with Mother Cook. U.S. Patent Office and clerk typists, tell me some of the stories that she passed down.
Well, see, that's the thing. The weird part about this is I didn't really start working on this until she had transitioned.
Okay.
And I never really got back to her to ask her these things, but I have been able to, from talking to other women like Bernice Bowman, who worked at GAO.
Okay.
Right? I've been able to piece together certain aspects of what she had to experience. Washington, D.C. during World War II was like being in Mississippi or Alabama in terms of its racial policies, segregation, etc. So my mother, I'm sure, encountered that. Black women from all over the country came to Washington at the request of the government, but there was no place for them to live, right? And so I wonder sometimes if my mother got caught up in that. She came here, and I don't think she knew anyone. But I've also learned from Bernice Bowman, who was in the GAO, that while everyone did get paid the same, like if you were a GS2, everybody got the same thing. But when it came time for promotions, the black employees, the black clerk typists, did not get promoted. There was segregation within the office, so white typists on one side, black typists on the other, all getting work out of the same box, right? Yes. So, I've been able to piece together some things that my mother must have experienced. I know, for example, coming from Virginia, she rode in a Jim Crow car, right? Behind the locomotive that sucked in all the soot and the fumes, because that's where the Jim Crow cars were, right behind the locomotive, right? So I know she had that experience. But she never really talked much about World War II other than what I remember as a child. And I'm kicking myself now because there's a million things I'd like to ask her, but I'm left with kind of putting her in this historic big picture and understanding that what was in store for my mother was to be a domestic. But she made that journey. And she met my father in Washington, and as a result of that, my father was from Philly. They went back to Philly after the war, but had she not made that journey and met my father, I would have been born in the South. Which would have changed the whole arc of my life in all likelihood. So, I wish I have a million questions to ask her now, and I can't. But talking to these other women helps a lot. Helps me piece together some of what Mom must have gone through.
To kind of just hone the lens, hone in the lens. That's very powerful because, again, as I'm sitting looking at your mom's picture, and to know the work that she put in and the sacrifice, and now it makes way again for positions of so other black women could have in Washington. I would just say Washington area because they all migrated, and so again in the government, through the 60s, then through the 70s. Each generation is building upon each other, and so you see a great-grandmother give off to a grandmother, give off now to a mother, and so you see the generational, and then again, that's that generational wealth. Right. But we have to continue to build upon it.
Right.
Dr. Champion?
And I agree so much, and you look at how, going back to what you said in the beginning, the decisions they made, how they didn't understand that long-term impact that was going to change so many people, give so many other opportunities. As a individual, I did 37 years as a career federal government employee. My father did over 30 years before he was done when I started. And and I've heard stories of these things and how I recognized that I was achieved some great opportunities. They had other hard workers did not have the opportunity to achieve. But if they had not achieved what they did, I would never have had the opportunity to achieve the things that I did achieve because they set the tone. They made these doors open for us. They fought those battles. And we have a responsibility to continue on. It's that's why we can't forget these individuals who have laid down their lives for us to get to where we are, that we still own a responsibility to ensure that the next generation has it even better.
Sort of like taking the unseen, putting it on the scene to be seen.
Okay.
That's just my... Go ahead.
One of the things I do want to mention about these women, they were subjected to a great deal of violence. America during World War II was actually one of the most violent times in American history. There were in 1943 there were almost 300 race riots in America alone. And it happened as a result of the Great Migrations. Black people left the South, went west, went north. And the worst, there was a riot in Philadelphia in 1944 because they hired the first black motormen in the public transit. But the worst riot was 1943 in Detroit. Okay, but you in other places in America, black women were pulled off of buses and beaten, particularly black women from the north who went south and didn't want to move to the back of the bus or give up their seat. And so you had all these instances where, black women were subjected to racial violence and killings. Also, there were also 10 recorded lynchings in America during World War II. And one final thing I'd like to say, Rosa Parks first turns up in World War II. Okay, there was a woman named Reese Taylor. Oprah Winfrey mentioned her a couple of years ago. There was a woman named Reese Taylor who was, it was a Sunday, 1944 November. She was on her way home from Sunday school from church, and these 6 white men grabbed her, stripped her down, raped her. Everybody knew who did it. They even said they did it, and the NAACP sent Rosa Parks there to investigate that incident. So, and the things that we equate with sit-ins, for example, during the 1960s, started in Washington during World War II. Co-eds at Howard University sat in at a lunch counter in a store that refused to serve them. They were eventually arrested, for breaking the law. But so a lot of the things that we later equate with the I'll say the modern civil rights movement, a lot of it jumped off during World War II. And these women were actually the black women were actually, and the men who were in the military were actually the spearhead to the civil rights movement. It's the same people. It's the same generation.
Wow, that's very disturbing to know that the recorded lynchings, and then the many white women, the black women that were taken off the bus and beaten. Yeah. As I was listening to, I think it was Bernice Bowman, if I'm not mistaken, she was talking about how even when the white men had authority over them, how they wanted sexual favors.
Oh, that was Willie Mae Govan in Alabama. She had, I think, the best line in the film. She said, at that time in Alabama wasn't nothing free but a white man and a black woman. And so sexual, there was no such term as sexual harassment and all the language and some of the laws we have today. And so she was in Alabama and we're at E.I. DuPont making gunpowder. And she talked about how she says the white bossmen wanted sexual favors, and she said if you didn't comply, you didn't have your job much longer. So she says she didn't, but some of the other women did. And she has she contracted an illness from making gunpowder, and she's still taking medication for it today. She's 93, I think. Yeah.
And these women's age, again, I think you said 83 to even 105.
Yeah. Well, right now, the youngest in my documentary is 89. The oldest is 97.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's still some around who are 101, 102, like that. Yeah.
And some have passed on.
Yeah, and most have already transitioned.
Okay.
Dr. Dorothy Height was actually the first person I interviewed for this.
I'm glad you got an opportunity to get her before the screen.
Yeah, actually, I was the last person to interview her. And she immediately understood the historical significance of this. Only Susan King, who hopefully will join me tomorrow, she's the only woman I met that I didn't have to give a history lesson to and tell them what you did was historically significant. They hadn't taught, many of these women hadn't talked about this in 60, 70 years. Some of them had never talked about it. So I had to tell them, yes, what you did was historically significant, and here's why.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that you had an opportunity to even share that even before they transitioned, they went knowing that they contributed greatly to the movement. Dr. Champion.
Yes, sir.
What you got, brother?
Well, no, I was just going to say...
deep in thought over there.
And it is some very deep things that we need to bring to the forefront of American society. And unfortunately, because sometimes it's not to the forefront, there are individuals who are still trying to make headway in certain career paths that are still going through very similar uncomfortable situations, wondering how are they going to get out of it. And I think this story shares a history that gives them hope.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I'll say, and I've talked to African American women in the nuclear industry, and there are very few African Americans at the nuclear power plants, and how they receive a harassing environment that almost makes most want to leave that type of environment, because it is dominated with white males, and you're in some very closed, confined space, and the brushing up, supposedly accidental brushing up, and those things, and to know that this is nothing new, and to know that there is a story is helpful.
Dr. Cook, how can one support you in this work?
Actually,
We're going to manifest it, Doc.
Great. I'm still fundraising for this. To the average person, it looks like it's finished, but it's not. It needs some buffing and polishing, some technical things, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm still fundraising for it. It is a feature-length documentary, which means it's presently 65 minutes. I will cut it down to about 58 minutes.
Okay.
And so people can go to a couple of websites, www.invisiblewarriorsfilm.com or www.bbbeef.org, and they can go there to make donations and support the project.
Can you give that again so we can put it on our thread?
Okay. The webpage for the film is www.invisiblewarriorsfilm, all one word, .com, and I also run a educational foundation which is supporting this, and it's called the Basil and Becky Educational Foundation. Becky being my mother, Basil her brother, my uncle. And you can look and get more information about the work I'm doing there at bbbeef.org.
Okay. Yeah. Definitely want to be able to support you in this documentary, this work, because this is something that needs to be forever told.
Yes. It'll be 10 years of my life this December, and from my point of view, it should have been done a long time ago, but I also understand there's this journey, this personal journey that I've had to take through this. So it's easy. I've evolved, I've changed, I've matured, it's changed me in a lot of ways, and I would say overwhelmingly for the better. But so often in life, if we knew what the journey was going to be, we wouldn't take it. If I had known this was going, and I'm just being honest, if I had known this was going to take 10 years, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I'm so glad I did, because of what it's given me and the relationships I've developed, and just it has changed me. And I fell in love with 600,000 black women, and I'm evolving into a feminist. So, and a lot of that is because of the work I've been doing. I've been hanging out with women in their 80s and 90s for the last 10 years. And I have a certain kind of sensitivity to them. I like listening to them, and it's great.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, in what ways has it helped you evolve and become better?
One, just looking at women generally, but black women in particular. I'm of the belief that I'm a minority opinion here, but I'm of the belief that women are more evolved than men as a species, and I think that women are higher up on the evolutionary chain than men.
Okay, you get a clap and a snap, and you get a couple of snaps in the audience over here.
And so I.
Well, me too. Hashtag. You too?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So that's one way it's changed me, and I can look at women. I see a certain strength in them that I didn't see when I started this. Right? When I started this, it was another film.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
It was another film, and I put my best into it, but it was another film, and I wasn't nearly as involved in it as I am now.
Okay.
Okay? And so I've come to learn how strong these women are. Not just these women, but I think we as a people, whether male or female, we have endured the most abuse in recorded human history, and still we rise, right? And the women have endured more than anyone. Black women have in my opinion, have suffered more than anyone. But evolution tells us that the oppressed always rise above their oppressor, and part of getting stronger is you have to adapt to overcome your oppressor to survive. We as a people have done that, and black women at the bottom of that totem pole that everyone's standing on are the strongest part of, in my opinion, are the strongest part of that totem pole.
And it probably accounts for the political activism of African American women in this era.
Yeah.
That's the culmination of this work.
Yeah. Black women are out here today, like, taking care of serious business, and they're doing it as a collective, as a group. And you know, I'm not trying to romanticize this, but looking from the outside looking in, there's not all this unnecessary competition that you have when you have men in a room, right?
Yeah.
And
This group excluded.
yeah. So women have a better history of working cooperatively and working together and getting things done, right? So I'm seeing all these things and experiencing all these things and knowing all these things that I didn't know when I started, and I like talking about black women and their accomplishments, but we've all had tremendous obstacles that we've had to overcome, and still we rise.
Still we rise.
And I think a lot of that is because of black women. I mean, they've always been the backbone of the family. Yeah.
And the community, for sure.
And the community.
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah. So
Held it together.
yeah.
Even through just being reminded of even through you know, slavery, and watching her man beat, and yet and still give him enough of her strength that he can lift his head back up to go out and do what was expected, you know, at that time. So again, black women just resilient.
Yes.
And
I think we also need to talk about them just in the context of gender. Remember, World War II blew up a lot of myths about black people and about women, black, white, whatever, that they could do this. They could do, you know, a Rosie is any woman during World War II who did traditional man's work. That's who a Rosie, okay? And so we couldn't have won the war without these women. 8 million women went into the workforce because of World War II, and they did jobs for the most part that were traditionally male jobs. And in many cases, they did the jobs better. Okay, so it blew up the myth that women could not do these jobs. And so today in 2019, women are represented pretty much everywhere. Maybe not in the numbers you'd like, but it's clear that women can perform.
But clearly
and
are
well.
the most educated as well.
Yes.
So definitely kudos out to our black queens, our black sisters, our black mothers, grandmothers.
Yes.
Definitely. You know, this has just been just a profound conversation, but definitely we could never get to the bottom of it. But I thank you.
Thank you.
And I encourage you to continue on that journey of uncovering and getting in there and bringing it to the forefront, you know, where it is no longer hidden and that it is exposed so that a young girl today can see, you know, herself, you know, or themselves in a Rosie, to know that they can do exceedingly and abundantly. Because again, I believe we do have to see what we are to become. But when it is exposed, we can grab it and we can become it. So I thank you, my brother. I thank you, man. It is, I mean, over 600,000. 600,000. I mean, the story hidden, and here you come, you know, you just, you know, expose it and then fall in love with the black woman all over again. You know, I mean.
And I'd like to say also there are other scholars out there. Dr. Maureen Honey, University of Nebraska, she just retired. She's in the documentary, and you know, I've used some of her research. I mean, you know, the interviews are original, but there are other scholars out there who've done work on this before me. Unfortunately, in 2019, they're in books, and so who reads books? I mean, you know, I think that's the power of this, is that it's visual, and so it's accessible to the public. Versus a scholarly
Tell the story.
text.
Telling the story. And that's how we traditionally told the story.
Right.
You know, you have something?
Well, we have comments.
Yeah,
of course. Elder A.G., black women have always been the backbone of the family and the community. We have Sister Candace Yvette Dula. You want to share what you said?
Black women were the mothers of the earth.
Yes. Yeah.
They nurtured the babies, absolutely. What
The white baby.
particularly, and there's a saying that the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, And so we know how black women have rocked the cradle and have given their grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren access into boardrooms.
Yes.
Now we have to be responsible. Again?
Dr. D. Mangum, Black historical legacy being revealed is so essential to our community.
Yep, especially if we're going forward. Amen. Yeah. All right. Dr. Wells.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead. You're on.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask Greg to do before the segment ended was to encourage people to reach out to the members of their family who may still be able to answer the questions that your mom could no longer answer for you.
Okay.
So would you say, we were talking about this just before we came here, so.
Okay.
Well, what I would say to the audience, if you have a woman in your family who's 90, 91 or above, I think you should ask her what she did during World War II. She might surprise you. A lot of these women just saw it as a job. They never talked about it. And what's been happening, fortunately, is women are starting to approach me and say, my mother did this during the war, my aunt did that, and now they're able to see their mother's World War II work in this bigger historical context. And so if you don't ask, they probably won't tell you. So you must ask. The same, and I would say the same thing if you have males in your family who were in World War II, about the same age. Ask them, because a lot of times they will not talk about that. And if you ask them, they'll talk, but they're not going to volunteer. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. This has been short of amazing. Dr. Champ, some last moments you want to?
Okay, yes, certainly. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Wells, who is with us today, and for introducing us to you, Dr. Cook. And we really are very excited that you were here. And I just want to say to those who are listening that you can continue to follow this up. He gave you a couple of email addresses, and we'll put those out in the stream. But also tomorrow, at the African American Museum, Civil War Museum, at the Congressional Black Caucus on Friday afternoon. You can come and learn a lot more. This was just a way of being introductory, and so we're just honored to have this pleasure to have you, to join us today. And then one last thing, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to also say, for those of you who are attending the Congressional Black Caucus over the next few days, there is a fatherhood initiative that is going on Friday morning at 9 a.m. So we invite you to come out. It's the theme is moving fathers and young men forward against a climate of racism, white supremacy, and policies that are attacking the black and brown communities. So we invite you to come out. This is an official event of the Congressional Black Caucus, Friday morning, the 13th, from 9 to 11, and you will see us there, and hopefully we will see you there. So have a great week.
Amen. Amen. Dr. Wells.
Yes, sir.
Your last parting moment, sir, on your debut.
Well,
because y'all will be back.
Well, I just want to thank you for this forum. I think this is a powerful medium to get this kind of information before the people. It is always a public service to do that, in my view, having served in the federal service for almost as many years. I recognize how communication is really at the heart of our ability to keep everybody moving forward. So I want to thank you for providing this opportunity for Gregory to tell this story and to keep this hope alive.
Yes. Well, I definitely thank you, gentlemen, for coming, consenting, and being a part of this powerful dialogue of exposing and bringing something so powerful to the forefront to connect us with our history so that we can move forward to our destiny. So very powerful. Thank you. And Dr. Cook, thank you for your unselfishness. Your unselfishness.
Thank you.
Because you have to get in a place where you are denying yourself and then also be willing to take on, that responsibility. And that does take for you to be unselfish. And I thank you for your unselfishness to connect many others beyond the 600,000, with their history. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, brother.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Mm-hmm. Ladies and gentlemen, our time is up. We definitely thank you for yours. Remember, when good men stand together, we become greater. We are our brother's keeper. See you on the other side of greatness. God bless you. Thank you for watching.
My brothers keep a show, I gotta let them know. Tuesday, 7 p.m., gotta let them know. 3 M's, mental model, gotta multiply. God gets all the glory, hands in the sky. My brothers keep a show, I gotta let them know. Tuesday, 7 p.m., gotta let them know. 3 M's, mental model, gotta multiply. God gets all the glory, hands in the sky. My brothers keep a show. Introduce the host. My brothers keep a show. Introduce the host. That's the Dr. Michael Green.